We are recording episode 1, so we're really excited to kick off our first episode. And look, there's a lot of topics we could have talked about for this episode, but we wanted to talk about a concept that we see really separates some of those really successful people out there from those people who struggle a bit more, especially in the finance space. And so the topic that we're going to talk about today is consistency. And consistency sounds like, well, what's that got to do with finance? And we'll let's unpack that as we go along. But I really think that this is one of those areas, especially in this day and age where there's lots of noise, lots of distractions, lots of things that can take us down other paths, lots of news stories which could take us in different directions. Consistency is something that requires patience. And look, it's probably not the most sexy topic in terms of it's not, it's like, oh, well, that's not going to get me rich quick or things like that. But this is one of those things that we see actual success and long-term success, and people actually really satisfied with their outcomes as well too, is when they can apply consistency to what they do. So consistency really is around your habits and building great habits around your finances. And there is unfortunately no quick win to this. It's a little bit like, I'm going to use the analogy as we go along, around going to the gym or working out, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's a bit of a different area, but it's got a lot of similarities to finance. And just like the first time you might go to the gym and you do a workout, you come home feeling exhausted, and then you get up the next morning and you probably don't look a whole lot different to you did the day before. But what it is that consistency of continuing to go back, continuing doing the reps, getting on the treadmill, or however that exercise might look, over time will transform you. And it's the same with finance. If we are consistent in what we're doing, if we don't get distracted by the new technique or the new way of doing things, or we're going to try this week and this the next week, we will actually seek some consistency. But with all things finance, consistency is only relevant if we know what we're working towards. So the first step in all of this is actually your goals. And this might sound like, well, I thought we were talking about consistency. And we're talking about consistency, but consistency involves being consistent with the actions that you take. So whatever those actions look like, they need to be consistent, but they need to be actually adding towards progress. But how do you know you're progressing if you're not actually setting goals? So if I asked you right now to think about what is your 12-month goals around your finances, what's your 3 to 5 year goals, and then what's your 10-year plus goals as well too. Have you actually written them down? Do you know what they are, and are you working towards them? Because what I find is a lot of time people have, and it's fine. We all fall in that bracket, and I'm going to use a couple of examples for myself here because I think sharing personal experience is always a great thing. But when we don't have specific goals, it means that we don't necessarily have specific actions or measures to know how we're getting there. And so what we might be consistently doing is consistently failing or consistently making decisions that don't take us towards our goal. And I just want to read a quote from James Clear. He wrote the book Atomic Habits. And I love this because this is part of thinking through, what am I being consistent with? How do I be consistent? How do I continue to head towards where I want to go? So I'm just going to read this quote, which is, "The first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It is the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit." And when we are being consistent with our finances, it's those bad habits along the way that will ruin us. And that doesn't have to start big, and it doesn't even have to finish big, but it can impact you along the way. So the first thing we do need to talk about is goals. And I want to give you an example of one of my goals. And so I sat down at the start of the year, and my wife and I, it's usually a New Year's Eve thing actually, once the kids have been put in bed, we'll reflect on the year, what's going on, and we'll sort of talk about the year ahead as well too. This year we actually started talking about it before New Year's because it was like, well, we actually want to plan and get ready for it. And I'll make it sound like we're really organised and we're really good at hitting our goals. But I think if we don't have anything, when we get to the end of next year, when we get to New Year's Eve again, how do we measure where we've been and where we're going and what we want next? And I think a lot of times when we talk about goals, we don't actually take that long or that often to sit down and say, what do we really want? And that might be, what do we want out of life? What do we want out of our finances, out of our job, out of our relationships? And so what happens is that we get to the end of the year and we don't really have a measure to say, well, were we better in that or not? But what happens when we set really good, clear goals is that then we have a really good, clear way to get there. And I'm going to use an example for myself. So this year I said I want to start getting fitter. So one of my goals was that I want to get fit, right? And so that seems like a really nice goal. And I'm not. I wouldn't say that. I've done a lot of physical activity over the last couple of years. We've got some young kids, and I find most of the physical activity has been running around, chasing after them, and then you just sort of crash at night on the couch. But I want a little bit more than that. I actually want energy for my kids. So, firstly, my goal was I want to get fit. And everyone goes, well, that sounds like a good goal. That sounds like a great thing. Right, what actions am I going to take to get fit? And so then it's looking back saying, well, I could go to the gym, I could go for a walk, I could go for a run, I could go for a bike ride, I could catch up with friends and, get a kayak and go out and swim around Lake Epilock or different things, or you might have another body of water close to you. But at the end of the day, there are lots of different activities I could take to getting fit. But when I get to the end of the year, how do I measure that I am fitter than I was at the start of the year? Have I done anything to even set a baseline or say where I am now? Have I done anything to measure and say, well, I need to be here. I want to be at this weight. I want to be at this. I want to do that. So when we have really unclear goals, what it means is that we can set really unclear actions to reach those goals, and then we never know if we're actually successful towards those goals. So when we talk about finance and we talk about consistency, we want to be heading somewhere, and what that does is that gives us that feeling of progress and like we're heading towards that direction. So the first thing is to actually sit down and think about your goals. And the reason I say this too is that we have clients who come in from time to time and people that we meet, and we ask them, what do you want? Like whether it's retirement or for the next 10 years. And a lot of times it's really simply just, I want to be more wealthy, or I want to retire at this date, or, but it's the clients that come in and go, this is what I want to do. This is when I want to retire. This is how it looks, or this is, I want to pay down debt, or I want to be able to get here within the business. All of a sudden they've set a clear goal, and now they've got a clear way to measure progress towards that goal. What it also does is that if we've got a clear goal, then we also have a clear understanding of the actions we need to take, and also too, which I find more and more these days, is reducing the noise around the things that we don't need to do. So my first goal was I want to get fit. I actually went back after a bit of reflection and thinking through some of the things that we talk about with clients and things like that to say, I need to be much more specific. Because if I'm not specific, I'll get to the end of the year and say, yeah, maybe I'm fitter. I don't really know. And so I would just be going off a feeling, and I wouldn't actually have any sense of measure or any sense of idea. And while it's good to have a feel-good feeling, if I feel fitter at the end of the year, great. But how do I even measure that? How do I even know? So what I've actually written down is, and I'm going to say it here, and I'm going to be holding myself to it then, and maybe I'll have to bring updates along the way as well too on how I'm tracking, is I want to be able to run 10K in 45 minutes. For me, that feels like a goal. It's a stretch, but it feels like a goal that I want to get to. But what it's done is it's made it very clear that, well, if I'm going to be doing that, I need to be out putting time on the road running. If I'm out swimming, I'm not going to hit that goal. If I'm out riding a bike, I'm not going to hit that goal. If I'm in the gym all the time lifting weights, which clearly I'm not, but if I'm in the gym lifting weights or training for 100-meter sprints, I'm not going to hit that goal. But at the end of the year, and along the way, I have a clear way of knowing if I'm progressing towards that. And I have a clear way of knowing that I've hit that goal at the end of the year. And what it will then do is help me have consistent actions along the way. So does that make sense to everyone? Is that fair enough that we need clear goals if we're going to have consistent processes and habits in place to reach those goals? So the first thing is I want you all, whether it's now, you hit pause, or whether it's at the end of the episode, to actually grab a piece of paper and write down your goals, and then come back and say, are they specific, and do I actually have actions to get there? If you don't have actions to get there, or it's not clear enough that you know the actions you need to take, rewrite them again, really think about it. And this takes time. And unfortunately, in our world where we get distracted and we can just pick up the phone and watch something else, all of a sudden we haven't actually really thought about what we want and how we want to get there. And I think that is so key if we actually want to make progress and we want to head in the right direction. So when I come back to what we see successful people do is they are consistent, but they are consistent because they know what they are consistent towards, not what they're heading towards. So write down some goals. Dream big. The only way you're going to hit a big goal is if you dream about it, write it down, and then start to work towards it. And I heard a really good concept the other day in a book I was reading where it was like, if you set a really big goal, it's actually really helps clear some of that noise around, well, what do I need to do to get there? And I'll use another example. A couple of years ago, and talk about running, wanting to do 10K in 45 minutes. I actually was trained to do a half marathon. And so there'll be some people out there that go, half, where's the other half? And then there'll be some people going, half marathon, 21Ks, that sounds like a very long way. And for me, it was. When I first started on that journey, it was a long way. It was, I'd never run more than 5Ks. And I thought, well, I don't need to run more than 5Ks because when am I ever going to run more than 5 kilometers in my life? I have a car, or if I'm desperate, I'll ride a bike, or I'll find a motorbike, or I'll catch a bus. There's plenty of other things I can do that I don't need to run more than 5K. But I got to know a guy, and he's a really good close friend now. He's run ultra marathons back in the day. Luckily, when I met him, he hadn't run a lot in the couple of years before I met him. So luckily, he was a bit closer to my fitness level, and he wasn't expecting me to go out and run 90-kilometre ultra marathons. But he was coming from a completely different perspective on what a half marathon looks like than I do. But he said, look, I want to run with someone. And I said, I love that idea. I want to do something like that, something that I can, an achievement, not just get fit. So we would get up early, and this is pre-kids. So getting up early seemed like I was a bear with a sore head. I'm a night person. I'm not a morning person. I've learned to be a morning person a little bit more now, but we would get up early in the morning, would go for a run, would get up early on Saturday mornings. I'd leave my wife sleeping in bed going, I'm so happy for you, and would be out pounding the pavement at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning of freezing cold winters. We would go do 10Ks up and down One Tree Hill. We'd go out along the lake and run along paths and different things like that. So it was a lot, but there were weeks that I didn't want to do it. There were days that I really didn't want to go for a run. And so some days just doing 5K felt like an achievement. And then other weeks, man, I felt like I could run 10, 15, 20K. So, but we had a clear goal that we were going to do the half Melbourne Marathon. And so what that meant was that we were clear that when we were getting out and we were training, that's what we were training for. And so we were making consistent steps towards that. So we started off with one run a week, and then it was 2 runs, and then it was 3 runs, and then it was some focused runs around building strength and building endurance and things like that. So we did a whole lot of work around achieving that goal. But if we didn't have that goal, well, we'd just sort of casually go for a run. And so there wouldn't actually ever be that marker of progress and success. So for me, that was a journey where I learned that having those specific goals really drives specific actions towards those goals. Hopefully I've talked enough about goals, but I really think, and I'm going to come back to this from time to time, because I really think goals are such an important part of how we achieve success. Because if we don't have that, then what does success mean? Well, you're successful. But actually having that goal of saying, well, that's a marker for success, and I know that I'm progressing towards that, and I know I'm on the journey towards that. And that's where we can then build consistent habits and consistent actions around achieving that goal. So I want to talk a little bit about consistency as well too, because consistency means, and if I come back to that running metaphor, some days that we get out and do those actions, it's going to feel like hard work. It's going to feel like really hard work. So if it's saving long term, or it's building up that, it's investing, or it's, you've got that rental property that you're paying down, or it's even just paying off debt in your own name, there'll be days where you feel like, I just want to throw it all in. And it's those days that you then need to bring back out why you're doing it. Why are we going down this road? It's for that goal. It's because I know I'm going to feel so much better after I've paid off that credit card, or I'm going to feel so much better knowing that I can retire 12 months sooner, or I'm going to feel so much better knowing that I've started making those decisions that will take me towards that thing that is really meaningful. And I think that's where the distractions come is sometimes it's easier to trade that longer term bigger achievement goal for something smaller now. And if we didn't have a deadline, and we didn't have a specific goal that we were setting when we ran that half marathon, it would have been very easy to just sleep in or send my friend a text and say, hey, maybe not today. And maybe not today, if I go back to that original quote, would be that first mistake of actually saying, well, that's when we stop being consistent and we create a new habit of not getting out and doing what we need to do, not putting in the reps, not putting in the time that we need. So consistency is about putting in those reps. Bill Gates has a great quote here where he says, people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and estimate what they can do in 10 years. And I really want you to think about, where were you 10 years ago? And we've actually done this with a few clients as a bit of an activity. It's a fun activity, I find, is to go, well, where was I in 2014? What did it look like in 2014? What kind of car was I driving? What was the job? What was the salary? Where was I living? For us, that was 10 years ago, was pre-kids. It was a completely different world to where we are now. But how far, like if you would have asked me in 2014, guess what you'll be doing in 2024? You'll be recording a podcast and you'll have 4 young kids and, all of these other things that have gone on. I would have gone, oh yeah, okay, sure. But we're here and that's where I think sometimes looking back helps us also look forward. So I would say when you're setting your goals, don't underestimate what you can do in 10 years, but also don't put things out there that you may not get to in 12 months and feel really disappointed about it. What you want to do is set goals where you go, I can progress and I can get towards that. And then what does that mean next time? Or what does that mean when I achieve that? Then I can go to the next level. Charlie Munger, so the late Charlie Munger, who was the partner to Warren Buffett, he talks about compounding interest. And I think one of the big things in finance that we forget, or not necessarily forget, but that we don't always focus on, is the power of compounding interest. And I would say go away and do a bit of research if you want to look more into compounding interest and just the impact over time. Trust me, it works, because that's what the banks do when they loan out money. They are leveraging compounding interest against the people taking out a loan. But on the other side, we can use it for our own financial success as well. So the late Charlie Munger actually talks about compounding interest as the 8th wonder of the world. And if you think about, I could never tell you what the other 7 wonders of the world are, but for someone so successful to coin it as a wonder of the world means it's very important to what you do. And so he says the first rule of compounding interest, which I would say is the main one, is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. And that is, we need to be consistent. We need to keep doing the same things over and over and trusting in the process that will get us to the goal. And so one of the big things to think about is compounding interest. And you can go and find calculators online to sort of show, if I put away $50 a week, $100 a week, $200 a week, whatever it looks like for you, if I'm putting that away, what does that mean? Or if I'm paying off debt that little bit quicker, how does that impact over time? And so finding a calculator, we might be able to share 1 or 2 in the notes as well too, that in the show notes that you can go to. But those calculators will exemplify the power of compounding interest. And over time, that original investment will be what you're earning and more. And what we've seen from successful people, and we've seen a lot of people over the years in lots of different states, the really successful people are the ones that have set and forget. And they're the ones not set and forget altogether, but trust in the process. So I'm investing in the market for the long term. I'm investing in that property for the long term. It's not I'm investing today and tomorrow, based off a news article about something, I'm going to change my mind. It's I'm investing, and look, I've seen plenty of portfolios, and some of the most successful portfolios don't have things that would shoot the lights out. They have things that they've just consistently added to over time. And that's where we see the success. But it takes time and it takes patience. And a lot of people, if they don't have those longer term goals and those bigger things that they're reaching for, will get distracted, will change their mind, will go, oh, well, I'll do this or I'll change it to that. And that's where they're interrupting it unnecessarily. And what they're doing is they're actually foregoing that future benefit, foregoing that future growth, because they are just running around with whatever the latest thing is or whatever the latest fad is. And look, it's okay to keep your eyes and ears on things, but is it helping you in your goal, or is it just a distraction? Is it going to be better for you in the long run, or is it just noise at the end of the day? And a lot of times there's a lot of feel-good things out there. But if I go back to my example of running a marathon, I could have done heaps of different things, but nothing replaces actually going out and putting kilometers on the legs. Nothing replaces actually getting out there and running. And it's the same with finance. There is no book that you can read, no YouTube video, or even podcast, if I can say that, that you can listen to that will change you unless you're actually going to take actions as well too. Just reading and learning is not enough. You've got to start putting in those reps. What are you putting in those reps to? Well, that's where we come back to what are the goals and what are the actions we're going to lead to get to those goals. Some of the other things that consistently help people with their finances is reviewing as well. So many people, and I mentioned it earlier, set and forget. Some things are really good to set and forget. So don't look at the portfolio every day unless you know that you're not going to be swayed by news and markets and stories and fear and all the other things that are out there vying for your attention. But also to make sure that you're keeping on top of things. Make sure you know the numbers. There are a lot of people that I meet where I go, well, what's your budget? And they have no idea. They have no idea what they're spending where. And it's like, have a look at where your subscriptions are at. It may have started off with Netflix or Stan, and then you've got KO, and you've got Disney Plus, and you've got all the other different ones out there. There are so many out there. Do you need them all? Which ones are you actually using? What's actually giving you value? Or again, what's distracting you and not actually helping you on the progress you're going? So maybe it's cutting a couple of subscriptions so you can actually go out and go for a run or go to the gym. Also to reviewing like other expenses. So whether it's your utilities, a lot of times people get themselves in, they forget that they haven't actually looked at what they're paying for they know when they get the bill, but they don't actually know, well, what's the rate I'm paying on that gas or that electricity? Can I get a better results elsewhere? Can I do something else? So it's really reviewing that, and your interest rates as well too. If you're with a bank, call up the bank and ask if they can do a better rate. You'd be surprised how many times they can. But if you don't ask, then the answer is always going to be no, or the answer is always going to be that's what it is. Like what you've got is what you've got, and so it's always good to ask. And two, sometimes it's actually having enough confidence to go and ask. It's okay to get a no, but if you don't ask, then guess what? You'll never know whether you've actually got that. And I see for a lot of people, a lot of times they can review their expenses and they can find $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 worth of savings by looking at what they're paying on their loans, looking at where their expenses are going, maybe choosing to cook a meal at home rather than going out again, and all those little things add up. And you go, well, it's $50 a week turns into $2.5 grand for the year. What could you do with $2.5 grand? Well, you could invest it, you could pay off more loans, or you could use it for a trip away. Might be a small trip for us when we've got six beds to fill. It doesn't always go as far, but all I'm saying is that there are other things that you can do. But again, if you're not consistent with it, if you're not consistent with saving, if you're not consistent with reviewing where you're at with your expenses, knowing where the money's going, what you're doing, you are not going to see results. You're not going to see outcomes. And if you're not knowing what goal you're going for, if the goal is to pay down debt, what are you actually doing to get there? If the goal is to be debt-free in 5 years, what's the plan to get there? How are you doing that? What are the actions you're taking? Other actions you can take as part of that. So that's really what I want to talk about today was consistency. I know I've probably rambled on a little bit about goals and running a half marathon, but really all I want to do is highlight to you that there are lots of things you can do. You've got to take the action for it, but you've also got to then have the patience that the action you're taking will pay off in the long run, and not get distracted by other things along the way. If you're getting distracted, if you're finding there's a lot of things, try just to start off with what can I cut out, and a lot of times cutting out and clearing some of the noise will help you clearly know where you want to go and what you want to do and what you want to achieve. So in summary, consistency is one of the huge keys to success in finance. To be consistent, we have to know where we're going and what actions we're going to consistently take to achieve those goals. So set your goals, set the actions you need to take to get there, and review along the way. If you have a goal, then you know that you're progressing to that goal. If you're reviewing for the sake of reviewing and not knowing why, then you're left floundering, or you're left going, I don't even know why I'm doing this yet. It's all fine. Review with the intent of saying, how do I improve and get better and get towards my goals? So that is my takeaway for today. Consistently work towards goals that you've set, and you'll be amazed at where you're at in 10 years' time. wish you all the best on that journey. Wish you, if you've got questions, please ask them. Please reach out. We want to help people reach their financial goals. We want to help people reach their destination, and we also too want to help people improve those habits or start those habits that will get them there. Thank you.